this, we can see that only in this area, only in the area of the study here, you have 23.7% of the total of the lots that are vacant. So only in this very specific area of Beirut, which is crucial, facing the harbor, right on Shar al-Helo, you have the whole Rmel, Ashrafiyeh, and already it is a very dense area. So again, we see the lost space that exists. And these are very small spaces that range between 200, even you have lots that are completely empty that are 15,000 square meter large. We also have, the non-constructible parcels, as I have mentioned before. So here we see a juxtaposition of the vacant land with the non-constructible, and we see how much space you have. The land use, mostly residential, commercial on the ground floor, typical typology of these streets of Beirut. Again, a zoom in on the different land uses of the area of Quarantina with the industrial spaces in green. You have the residential in violet, so very rich. The socioeconomic, reality of these areas with the different classes. And this is here also some sort of summary of all these realities that exist. So you have these two extensions coming from Ashrafiyeh through Ibrahim Basha, coming from the river through Al-Khudr, throughout Quarantina. You see, these are examples of Khudr Street, where you have these beautiful small courtyards within the buildings that are today completely ignored. You have the railway that crosses next to Armenia Street, beautiful railway, even the traces. I'm not being nostalgic, and I don't think the objective of this presentation is to say that we want to bring back these old traces, whether railways or other, but all I'm saying that we have a certain richness in the urban fabric that can contrast with the division that exists on the city scale. So it is important, I believe, anytime we want to think about interventions on the city scale, that we kind of juggle between the scale of the neighborhood, the scale of the unit, and the city scale that comes, in my opinion, on a second layer. So you see here the Ibrahim Basha Street, few images. And you see that's my last slide, the richness of this urban fabric on so many different sample areas. For example, in Ibrahim Basha, you see in the orange on the non-constructible parcels and the vacant land. You have the heritage building in red. You have the regular built fabric in dark, and then you have in dark orange, you have the small non-constructible parcels. So these are Al-Khudr as well, and in Shar al-Helo as well. So this is a very rich and very complex fabric that the city has. Unfortunately, the interventions that happened during the past years on the city never took advantage of this complexity. And the more interventions we have on the city scale, the more we lose this richness, because most of these lots, like 2 years ago, you had maybe 2 times more of non-constructible parcels. Today, these parcels are being, merged together to create bigger parcels and to give more built-up space for developers. So these small-scale parcels can play a big role. The vacant lots as well, the interstitial space, the right-of-ways. So all this richness actually is available, is there. All we have to do is just, zoom in and try to understand these neighborhoods in order to achieve a certain unity at the city scale, but step by step. A 3D view of the city with maybe some interventions around the Quarantina area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So, So, David. لا بس أنت. Sorry, عن جد sorry. Okay, so you were talking about voids, the voids, the unconstructible parcels. Okay, so what do you suggest us doing with these voids? Like, how can we make use of these voids?
Well, the fact that you acknowledge the void is already a very good start. The fact that you legalize the presence of the void is also a good start. The fact that you prohibit people from benefiting of the voids to merge them with other parcels. So actually regulation, trying to understand that these voids are within the city, they are interesting elements of the city, they are the smallest unit within the city in terms of regulation. Sometimes you have parcels of 5 square meters, which is very small, and I saw them. You can't even know that they are there. They are part of a sidewalk. But 5 square meters, I mean, you can put a bench or you can, and this is public space most of the time. So just acknowledging the fact that they are there is quite important. Doing something with them is a different story. I think it depends also on the area. It depends on what the neighborhood needs in terms of facilities. So it can depend. I don't want to give solutions for these non-constructible parcels. I just want to say it needs to be acknowledged. It needs to be legalized as well in terms of regulation.
Okay. Another thing is that we all know that there are a lot of underprivileged people in Beirut who are probably not noticed by anybody recently. So, and due to gentrification and people building in the city, no one will ever look at these people or give them any importance. They just want them to leave to rural cities and just leave and take their land and build anything instead of it. So what can we do about these people so that they wouldn't be forgotten at a certain point? How can we react to this?
I think this is the most difficult question in any city, but the idea of neighborhood planning, and dealing with neighborhood at the scale of the inhabitants kind of brings back these privileges. Anytime you try to deal with the city at the city scale, you kind of say, okay, this is not important, this is not important, this is going to go to the extent of a better solution or a better idea. But if you go to the neighborhood or even the street inside the neighborhood and you say, okay, today I want to start planning, I want to create a committee made of the people who live in this street. I want to put together certain experts in order to understand what is needed. If there is social inequality, then I'm going to repair this inequality. If there is a gentrification happening, it will be taken in consideration. So the risk of gentrification in neighborhood planning is much less than in regular planning, on the scale of the city. So I think dealing with the situation at this scale can prevent, bigger projects from completely ignoring these kinds of social classes that you are mentioning.
Okay. So do you think that there's a question from a person on the media who's asking that if you think that we should get loose of the complexity in the urban fabric or work with the complexity?
Should we get?
Loose, like leave the get rid of, yeah.
No, at the contrary, I think this is what makes the city specific. What I'm saying is that there is a contrast between the obvious division within the city at the city scale, and there's a very rich fabric that exists on a very small neighborhood scale. And we should deal with both, I think. Of course, we should not get rid of it, at the contrary.
Okay, and what about the physical boundaries present in the city and the areas surrounding the port, like the bridges,
yeah, I understand. Of course, one of the things I talk about is Shar Halo, but we have to face the reality of things. we have a coastline, we have the river of Beirut, we have Shar al-Hilo, we have certain infrastructure that cannot be changed. But what we can do is, for example, clear the clusters on the coastline. We can regenerate the river into a different kind of project. We can clear the clustering of the harbor, of the port. So we can use the existing infrastructure to regenerate certain areas just by changing, just by bringing back things to, decluttering. I think this is very important.
Okay. So do we have any question from the crowd? Oh, we have 2 questions.
Okay, hi. First of all, I'd like to thank you for this interesting presentation. My name is Yara. I'm an architect. My question is, some parts of Beirut are vibrant, some others are dead. Do you think that we plan in terms of urbanity to inject life in the dead?
We think we plan?
Do you think that we should plan in terms of urbanity to inject life in the dead? And how?
On a personal level, I don't believe you can inject anything into anyone. You have to deal with the existing situation, you have to deal with the reality and the specificities of each of these areas. And this is why I say dealing with the neighborhoods, understanding the neighborhoods, planning on the neighborhood scale is crucial. I mean, you cannot build social housing in Rmel as you would, for example, in Basta. You have to think of how things work. You have to look at, the social habits. You have to look at how things function, how things have functioned for a certain time. There is no generic solution. And the mistakes that we've made for a long time, not only on the scale of city of Beirut, but also, on the scale of the country itself, very generic solutions, very few, but always generic, always mistaken, always on the side, We need to zoom in. We need to understand this richness that I'm talking about is incredible. And it would be a shame to say I'm going to inject life here just because I need to inject something. Maybe the solution is somewhere else,
Okay,
so
thank you.
I don't know, but I mean, it is very specific, and this is the crucial thing.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Tanya, an architecture student. First, thanks for this amazing presentation. And I have a question. How can the port be part of the urban fabric and these all key criteria that you have explained?
Well, what I mentioned is that the port is a cluster within the city today. I mean, it's somewhere. Have you ever been to the port? No. Before the blast, you don't know what is inside the port, except if you are passing on the highway and you just sneak a peek. So it is a completely clustered area, off track. You cannot go there. What I'm saying is that this is a fact. This is a reality. It's like the camps. It's like the Harsh Beirut. It's like the clusters on the coastline. It's like the city center. Have you been to the city center lately? It's been 2 years, 3 years, I haven't been there. You cannot go there, it's clustered, around Place de l'Étoile. It's like a military zone. So what I'm saying is that this exists. This is part of the divisions of the city, and the consequences of these divisions is what is happening today. So, of course, the harbor should be part of the city. Look at cities like Rotterdam, look at cities like Barcelona. The harbor is the core of the life, of the vibrant life. This is what people do when they get to Oslo, for example. When they get to Barcelona, they go to the port, This is where everything happens. So we have an amazing opportunity. Again, I'm not going to talk about solution. This is not really what I wanted, what the message was today. All I wanted to say is that this exists. These are some of the problems we have. We just need to shift our focus from a certain scale to another scale.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, David. We're gonna go for a very short break right now, like a 10-minute break. Okay, so. Thank you.